Welcome to Morning Coffee and Mimosas. I'm Christina.
And I'm Joe.
We are a father-daughter duo. We come here Sunday mornings, but you can come here anytime you please. We banter about life, about business, and we do it over coffee and mimosas.
Good morning, Christina.
Hey, Dad.
Waiting for a good morning part of that, but it didn't happen. But all right.
No. I will always keep you guessing.
You always do. That is great. And therefore, we keep our listeners guessing, and hopefully they don't turn it off on that
They
gap.
might after that pregnant pause.
I know.
Oh,
So
well.
anyway, very happy to be here. We have a very exciting topic today. Why are you pausing?
I just am having fun with the pauses today. No, we do have a very exciting topic, but I also have to tell our listeners something before we get started. So as we were eating this morning, my parents went to see an 80s band last night, and I saw some hilarious video footage of the one, the only Joe Graziano dancing last night. So I thought that the listeners should know, because it was very a very far departure
I don't
from
dance. Yeah.
But you did dance last
But
night.
I did. There's a reason, though.
And for those of you that are interested, I will be sharing it out on our Instagram page for your viewing pleasure.
Oh, boy.
Because there's video proof of it.
Well, I don't dance.
So what happened there?
I really don't like dancing.
You must have been inspired. What happened?
Well, it's funny because I don't dance. I don't like dancing. I don't know what I'm doing dancing. I never took dancing lessons and stuff. So
I would not argue that you didn't know what you were doing, because it was you didn't seem to really know what you were doing, but you did it.
Not, but I did it, and I don't have fun, like jumping up and dancing and stuff like that.
You were smiling.
Yeah, I was, because one of the couples we were with, the husband Don, he said to me, first he tried with a drink. He said, why don't you go dance? I'll buy you a drink. And I was like, I'll buy my own drink. Thank you. And then a little later on, he said, how about a steak dinner at the restaurant of your choice?
Well, that's dangerous.
Yeah, that kind of upped the ante. And I still waited most of the night. And then it was
You're telling me that you weren't out there immediately?
Nope. I even waited. That's how much I didn't want to dance. And then there were a lot of people, and it got dark. I figured nobody could see me really too well. And then he said, the bet's still on. And I said, steak dinner, restaurant of my choice. He goes, yep. And up I went. I had to dance 2 songs to get the...
That was the deal?
That was the deal, yeah.
Well, luckily there was a flash on the camera that recorded it, because despite it being dark...
I forgot about flashes on camera.
So listeners, if you are all intrigued at what it would look like if this man danced...
It's no treat. You don't have to look.
I think it's an enjoyable video.
Yes, so
I think it's worth the watch. So we will share it out. And by we, I mean me.
Yeah, I know
I will sneakily post it from our @Morning Coffee and Mimosas on Instagram.
Yeah. And I'm not a betting person, but I do love food. So.
You are not a betting person, but I've also never seen you turn down a free meal.
No, exactly. And not steak, so.
You've always been willing to take a free meal.
I even had to confirm with him, like, you're not meaning like to take me to... like Red Robin or something like that.
He said of your choosing, which is a very
Exactly.
dangerous game. So where are you going to have him take you?
Well, we kind of bandied around like Peter Luger's Steakhouse in New York.
Okay.
So it might be. Never know.
Well,
anyway,
if you are able to bring a friend for the dinner.
I don't know if that friend is going to post videos of me dancing.
I don't think you're going to be dancing at Peter Luger's. You might get thrown out.
No, I said if you're going to post a video of me dancing.
Oh, is this a new challenge? If I don't post it, I get a free steak dinner?
Then maybe you get a free steak dinner.
All right, listeners. Well, wait and see.
We'll see. Anyway, so what are we talking about today?
I forgot about the topic today. I thought we were just going to talk about you dancing all morning.
No, nobody wants to hear that.
That's maybe true. I mean, I do, but I guess we can get into our topic episode.
Okay, good.
So listeners, what we're really here for today, other than to embarrass my father, as I always find an opportunity to do. If any of you have a dad that you also enjoy embarrassing, you get it. But today we're going to finish our 3-part series. So if you've been listening with us, we have been talking about communication for the last 2 episodes.
Correct.
So this is our final. In episode 25, if you listened with us, that episode, we talked about communicating for clarity and simplicity. So big picture. Last week, episode 26, our 6-month anniversary, we talked about 3 tips to effectively simplify your communication. And just to kind of summarize that for you guys, because I think it really builds here as we shut the series down. That was eliminating jargon, clarifying assumptions, and avoiding preconceived notions or ideas. So it all goes really full circle as we finally get to the 3rd and final part of our series. And a very important part. This week, we're going to talk about how to effectively communicate in writing. And I think that is sometimes where so much communication goes awry.
It's really the most important. We left it for last on purpose. It's really the most important since we text all day and send emails all day and post on blogs or whatever. We are literally writing all the time.
You're so right. And we've gotten out of where people used to very quickly just pick up the phone and say, let's just talk about something. So frequently now, everything happens and people will go back and forth and volley back and forth in writing with confusion forever
I'm
before
laughing
they just pick up the phone.
Because I do that all the time. Sometimes it's like back and forth. It's 2 or 3. And then I finally say, can I call you? You know, they say, yeah. And then everybody's so happy. It's like, look, let's just figure this out.
I think you said actually that you have a rule that if it goes back and forth more than 2, is it 2 or 3 times?
Am I making this? No, you're right.
Am I making this up?
If it's the 3rd volley, and I don't mean anything is wrong, just that you're starting to now have to write a lot to explain because the person didn't get it the first or the second time. Pick up the phone and.
So you're so I mean, this is not part of our lesson for today, but
no.
Part of it is like if you get to the same topic and you're clarifying more than 2 times, you just pick up the phone and talk to the person.
I need to talk to you. Yeah, because for whatever.
Obviously, my written communication is not clear enough today.
Right.
So let's just talk about
and I'm taking the blame. I mean, probably I messed up, or whatever. But I'm just saying, let's just get on the phone and talk about it. Right.
Yeah. And as we were going through kind of like talking about this topic and just kind of talking through thoughts a little bit, we were starting to get very fired up about certain pieces. So as we kind of, go through this conversation, I think there's going to be certain things. My dad has a lot of pet peeves and they started to he started to get like a vein on the right side of his head started to bulge a little bit as he was talking about certain things. So
let's have fun with this.
Yeah.
All right.
Always try and have some fun.
So what do you want to start with on the written communications? What was your...
Well, I think a lot of it goes back to what we've been talking about the last 2 weeks, which is knowing your target and understanding the tone. Mm-hmm. So in order for you to effectively set up a written communication, it's the same thing. You need to understand who it is you're talking to and what is the tone of that communication and how do they respond well to communication?
Yeah. And what do I want from that? Like, what do I want the person to do? Am I informing the person? Am I educating the person? Am I being humorous, or am I asking for something to be done?
Well, and
be clear on that.
But that goes to, understanding, making sure the other person is set up for success with knowing what to do with your communication.
Right, and it comes back to the very first part 2 weeks ago. Know what it is. What is the purpose of this communication? Yeah. It couldn't be simpler than that. Why am I communicating with you?
But I think so going back to like the first part though, understanding who you're communicating with, how they like to be communicated with, that's important because that will help you figure out what is the medium that you should be communicating in. Mm-hmm. So if written communication is the mode, is it that they prefer text messages or do they prefer email? Or do they prefer, the USPS is still around. You can still write a letter if somebody prefers that.
But yes, you could.
Exactly. But I think part of that is understanding the person, how they'll receive the information well, and the tone. So if you're talking to a friend, you might, talk with a little bit more of a casual manner. If you're talking to somebody that you've never communicated with, you might be a little bit more formal.
Mm-hmm. Good. What's our second one?
Well, the second one you started to give away too early.
Which was?
The The second part is clearly stating, and I mean, this is probably most important, is clearly stating what you want to happen from the communication. So what is a call to action in very clear terms? Mm-hmm. And I have actually started at times, if there's something important, I'll put in the subject line action required. And in the body of the email, make sure that it's really clear. What do you want somebody to do with this communication? Is it an FYI that they should be aware of? Is it, this is, hi, Joe, I'm writing you to get your feedback on something, to get your opinion. Hi, Joe, I need you to take the following action. All too often, people send emails with their thoughts and information, but no call to action for what you have to do with it.
It's almost like a stream of consciousness that the email is. And if you have to read an email 2 or 3 or 4 times to gather what it is they meant, that's not
right.
That's not great. I just received a really good email from somebody, and it was, the subject line was excellent as far as it just said things we need to, get done. And then the first part was, I just need answers from your team on these 3. And it was bulleted 1, 2, 3. And then the rest of the email was information to help with the other information, if you know what I'm saying, like clarity.
So they provided what they needed done, and then they provided after that, here's the information you might need to answer those questions.
Instead of a long email with all this information and then buried in there, like, please supply that or whatever.
That's a really good point, and I think it's something that, I even know myself often, I don't do that, right? Sometimes you put all of the thoughts on paper or in the email, and then you give the call to action. So somebody has to have read through all of those thoughts and information, and then you ask for, I think that's a really good tip, is
it was really nice. It was
put
really
in the beginning, here's what I'm going to ask of you, and then here's some information that might help.
Right.
I really like that.
Yeah. So it was very good. That was helpful.
I think the other thing in written communication, and we're all guilty of this, but using simple language. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to say they say, because I don't know exactly who said it first, but I've heard it often. So this is probably not a new thought, much like nothing we're sharing is necessarily new, more just reminders for people, right? But communicate at a 4th grade level is what they say.
That was my worst year in school. No.
It was actually I don't think I've loved 4th grade either, but maybe that's because that's when communication stepped up. I'm not sure.
But I don't know what 4th grade level means. So that's why,
Well, I think it's just, it tells you dumb down your communications. Like if you were going to use jargon, like we talked about last week, or if you were going to use some kind of a buzzword, just speak in plain English and speak in terms that anybody, regardless of what acumen they have, could understand. And I just said the word acumen. That's probably
too big for me.
Too big for 4th grade. So speak in whatever, language somebody could understand at any level.
Right.
And any experience.
So now I have to can I go to a pet peeve on this?
Yes, please. Only if that vein will pop again.
One pet peeve I have, and I really think if people would stop doing what I'm going to tell them to stop doing, things would improve.
Like things? What things?
Well, not all things, not your whole life.
He's like, we can solve world hunger.
That's it.
If you just stop doing this one thing.
But if you think about it, how many times you get an email that has an attachment and the person says, enclosed, please find, and then whatever it is. I hate. Yes, I hate. I really dislike that phrase, and I'll tell you why. We should speak in an email. We should communicate in an email the way we would speak to a person face to face. Enclosed, please find is an archaic phrase from years ago when you sent a letter, and when you opened the letter, you were basically warning the person that there was something else in that envelope. And it was a phrase that was used in the past, like maybe 80 years ago. So
you're using it like you just opened this letter, and if you were about to throw the envelope away, enclosed, please find.
Correct. And then, the letter from dad or whatever. Okay, I see it now, right? But when you get an email, there's obviously an attachment, either on the top or the bottom, but somewhere. So why don't we just write the way we would speak? Because if I was with you, I would say, hey, here's that form, and attached to it is whatever. So just start the email and say attached is, or you'll see that I've attached the document I want you to review, or attached is the document I want you to review. What does enclosed,
So you're
please
saying,
find mean? It
what
doesn't
you're
mean
saying
anything.
is don't communicate like you are John Hancock.
Yes, for some reason,
or Benjamin Franklin. You want
people speak to each other in 2021 language, but then they write in 1941 language.
Yeah, it's so true. And I mean, unless you're writing a legal contract that has specific things, like we should all be communicating the way we would speak.
Yeah, even lawyers need to clean all that garbage up, but that's another whole story. But that's leave it to them, because that's how they make it so confusing. You have to hire a lawyer to read it. So,
well, I always find it funny because we have all the contracts that go back and forth, and then we're like, maybe we should just get a legal to legal call together so that we can explain the context, because nobody knows what the heck any of this language actually means. We're like, what did you intend by what this meant? And that's where the legal process always goes.
Yeah, you need a lawyer to say, no, that phrase is okay. Okay, thank you. Well,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. So, you're communicating with your boss, or you're communicating with a colleague or a vendor or whatever. Just write the way you speak.
Yeah.
Make it conversational. People will enjoy it better. It's easier to read, and get away from all that fake stuff, because it's really just old-fashioned, formulaic writing that's obsolete.
You're so right. And I think the other thing too, we talked about this a little bit, about clearly stating what we want, the call to action, all of that. But along with the clear communications is format your emails so that they're easy to see and understand. I like bullets. I think most people appreciate.
Love bullets. Yeah.
I think, they bold and italics and underlines, those things that exist for a reason.
Yellow highlight. I mean, you can put highlights. It gives you all this capability.
Like, make it easy for people to know where they need to, because most of the time people are giving, no offense, but most of the time people are giving your email a skim. Mm-hmm. It's getting a skim.
Yeah, but if you see a bold, if you see a yellow highlight, you see something,
your eye knows where to go and what's important.
And I'm right. And I'm going to say, okay, Christina wants me to focus on these items, obviously. Yeah, that's very true.
So use your formatting to keep your language simple and to make sure that there's a simple structure to your communication.
Right. And can I give you one more pet peeve?
Oh, yeah, I love these.
So very often, let's say you even have a perfectly formatted email, right? And there's 4 people on the chain. And the subject was, let's say we're going to say it was podcast topics for today, right? That's the subject line. And of course, when you started the email, you started talking about podcast topics.
I think I know where you're going with this, and it drives me bananas.
And I'm not saying you, I'm just using you as an example. This is not you. But then, maybe 2 weeks from now, I want to send an email to those same 4 people, and I'm going to be lazy, and I find that email, and I click forward, but I'm just asking if the 4 of us want to go have lunch. But I was too lazy to change the subject line, delete the old copy of the thing, and take FW out of the subject line. Like, it's okay to grab an old email, clean it up and modernize it now, bring it up to date. But I can't tell you how many times.
But also, why do people need to use an old email for that? Like, how hard is it to just create a new email?
Well, let's say there were 5, 6 people on the email chain, and you just didn't want to put all of their emails in, or you didn't have them. I can understand.
Okay, maybe,
one. But adjust it, fix it. Don't just grab it and then send it. I've missed things where, because the topic was, we've already, I don't know what that was. That must be.
Well, and I think that's actually a good point, because people should also understand that whatever the email service provider that you use, whatever your domain, some people set up little like rules and things like that, where certain subjects go to certain folders.
I do that all the time.
Certain things get filtered out.
Right. So if you said podcast, it probably is going to go into my podcast folder, which I'll review, but I didn't know you wanted to have lunch.
Right. So I think that's important too, because sometimes people have certain rules that are tied to certain subject lines, and depending on what you pick and where you put things, your email might get filtered out or put somewhere else.
Right.
But even bigger than that, that is such a pet peeve of mine. It's not even like just starting a new conversation from an old email, but it's also, and I mean, I'm not saying I've never done this or do this. I probably do at times, but it's a super lazy habit that people do. So if there's a subject line and then you just start talking about something else in the same email.
Right.
It's
Make
like,
it a-
we're
make it a
already
new
talking.
thread.
Just start a new thread
Right.
because
I agree.
it's so hard to keep up with that stuff. And when somebody is skimming, they may not like, I hear people often talk about like, oh, they only answered one part of my note. But then I look at the note and I'm like, well, your note really wasn't about the topic. Like you asked a question that was
Right.
like totally, I don't know. People sometimes need to switch mental gears, you know?
Yeah.
You want to talk about something else? Well, I just think it's not that hard. Start a new
Right.
email that's specific to whatever. And,
Well-
and if your email is general and it's covering a bunch of different things, that's one thing.
Right.
But if your subject line is specific to a topic, stick with that.
Stick with it or start a new one. And related to that is don't cram a million topics into one email. So again, you're going to send an email about the podcast, and send the email about the podcast, then send another email about lunch, then send a third email about, something, a podcast topic we're going to do 2 months from now. Right?
Yeah.
Don't try to put a subject line or something that says this week's podcast, lunch, and, October's podcast topic. Like just 3 separate emails.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Another thing I got to say, punctuation, man. Text messages, it's the worst. Because
Right.
people like in text, and text is getting used more and more, I think, in like a business scenario.
Yeah. And we don't have to use those abbreviations because we all have full keyboards on the phone now.
And I mean, if you have to, like if people are trying to shorten you and R, I don't really care for that, to be honest.
You don't have to do it anymore. That's when you had a flip
That's when
phone.
you had to type. I mean,
Right.
but punctuate your things because it's so hard when somebody sends like a big blob of text with no punctuation and you're supposed to then make sense of what it is.
No paragraphs, no whatever. Yeah.
And this is a big pet peeve. So if you do this, you may want to reconsider. We all use dictation now because it makes our lives easier. And if you're driving, you can talk to your text, to your email, whatever. It's a great tool, great invention. Take a freaking minute and proofread your note before it goes out.
Yes.
Make sure that you're dictating with punctuation. Hi, Joe! Exclamation point.
Yeah, don't just talk. Don't just
Hi,
Joe,
talk.
I was wondering if on this afternoon's meeting, if you want to, whatever. That comes out as like a run-on
Right.
thing. And if you don't look at it, you might say something in there. It may have auto-corrected.
Yeah.
And
Do you know what happened in an email once
What?
that I received? Somebody dictated it, I believe, or they used, autocorrect or whatever. And instead of saying sorry for the inconvenience, it said sorry for the incontinence. And I'm like, that's not really what your email caused, but interesting. But it's like that kind of stuff that when you talk about like, and that was kind of an obvious, okay, that was a dictation error. But you use punctuation and proofread your stuff, like check your work, because all that it does is show a lack of respect to whoever is receiving it.
Right.
Because you were trying to make things easier for you in sending the note, but you didn't care at all to make things easier for the other person that was
that's
receiving
very
it.
true. That's very true. And I think I love what you just said. Read it first. Just read before you hit send. Just read it.
Yeah.
And you find all kinds of things that will prevent your own embarrassment and prevent confusion on the other side.
Well, and I think what happens is if we don't read that and we just send it because we're trying to be quick and we're trying to get things done and we're trying to make our lives easier, you end up not only making the other person's life harder and probably frustrating them, but you end up making your own life harder
Right.
because you then have to re-communicate or
And apologize.
clarify something
Right.
or come back and say, oh, I'm sorry, I was dictating my messages. It's just creates that back and forth. Maybe it creates that 3-point volley for you that then you end up picking up the phone and then it's like, oh shit, now I have to talk to Joe.
Right.
Now I have to talk to the guy.
And before I start talking to Joe, I have to apologize
If I
for the
had
stupidity.
just punctuated
Right.
and, checked my work, maybe I wouldn't have had to
Yeah.
have a phone call with you.
And by the way, I'm not recommending this product. I'm just saying that there are products. I happen to use a product called Grammarly. It's really awesome. It reads your email like as you're typing, and it fixes punctuation and stuff like that. It's really been excellent. And there are other products. I'm just saying that you can use not every one of us is an excellent punctuator or speller,
Right.
but it helps improve your context. It even tells you the tone. Like it'll actually tell you, this is kind of direct, or this is friendly, or
Really?
whatever. Yeah, it's very, very
So you need
effective.
a lot of help there, huh?
Evidently.
They're like, Joe, would you like to be a little friendlier?
This seemed nasty, Joe.
Joe, did you mean to write please advise, or let me know when you have a chance work?
Or get back to me now. That type of nasty stuff.
So funny. Well, I think the final piece, so if we weren't passionate enough about punctuation and checking your work, I think the final thing is structure and details. And what does that mean? That means use your subject line to tell people what your note is about, but then stick to that subject line, like we said in the communications. The other thing is, and this is a major pet peeve of mine, don't put the body of your text, like don't use your subject line to communicate everything. Have you ever gotten when somebody sent you an email and it was like, Joe, what do you think about, what did you think about the meeting we just had? I thought it was odd.
And that's in the subject line.
Subject line.
And then they hit send.
And they hit send and you open it and it's empty and you're like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
So your subject line that's like the money line, and you can get, people's attention that way, but that's what it should be about, is getting their attention.
Right. Say enough so they understand what the subject is.
Right.
But don't write a book in the subject line.
And it's a really good place for you to try and make sure that the goal of the email or the communication is captured.
It's captured. Beautiful.
So action required is good in the subject line, or need response, or needs action,
and related to what the subject is. The proposal. Proposal 807 or whatever it is. Your opinion needed below.
Right. Scheduling request, something like that. Like you can use that subject line so somebody knows what the intention is and what they need to do with it.
Right.
And then I think the other thing, as far as like the structure and details are concerned, is, and this is for email communication, right? But I always think about this, like you probably get CC'd on a million things throughout the day.
Right.
Sometimes people put an email and they put it to 20 people. I believe that the only people that should be in the to line are the people that need to take action on something. Mm-hmm. So if you want a response, like if I want a response from you, I'm going to put the email to you, and maybe I'll copy other people that need to just be aware. Correct. And then if that changes, be thoughtful up front to say, now I need feedback from somebody else as well, and add them to the to and remove them from the CC.
Very good.
I don't know. It's a little thing, but I feel like sometimes emails fly back and forth and then nobody's responding because everybody's in CC or everybody's in to, and nobody knows who's got to take action.
Right. And in keeping with the theme as we wrap this up, the reason we cover this kind of stuff, and it sounds like, we just want to, get our pet peeves out and so on.
Well, and that's part of it.
That's part of it. But
this is our therapy.
I was just going to say that. It's our therapy. It's a lot cheaper than getting therapy. But what all this does, if you take everything that we've just, spoken about in this little series, you look more professional and better and competent, and you will do better in getting new business, advancing your career, and all that.
And you'll be able to just operate more efficiently yourself.
Correct. Absolutely correct. Good.
So should we recap?
Brief recap.
Very brief recap, guys. So this ended up being a 5-step process. 5 steps to written communications.
There you go.
Number 1, understand the target and the tone. Number 2, clearly state the goal and the call to action in clear terms. 3, use simple language. Number 4, use punctuation and check your work. And number 5, structure and details.
Beautiful.
So
this is the best recap you have ever done.
That's because I wrote it down.
Okay, good.
I had better notes than usual.
Very good. Well, this was great. Thank you, Christina.
Plus, we only counted to 5.
Yeah.
I can usually handle like if it's on one hand, because I still use my hands to count.
Oh, I didn't even notice. So that was good.
I use the digits.
Okay. Thank you all so much for listening.
Thanks, everybody. If you liked what you heard, hit the subscribe button so that more content from us comes up. And a reminder, we will be showing dancing videos
my goodness.
of Mr. Joe Graziano. If you go to @morningcoffeeandmimosas at Instagram.
Oh, boy.
You're in trouble.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Wherever you are, whatever your story, thanks for spending time with us this morning. Now, go and make a difference in your world.
We have a theme going, Dad.
Yes.
In an earlier episode, you said you would run for ice cream.
And now I'll dance for steak. I love it. Thank you so much for listening.
Bye, everyone. Have a great week.